How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name's Josh Hutchinson. Today, Binksy and I are completing our four-part series of divisional previews by discussing the Pacific Division. Let's go! Binksy, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. I'm a little punchy, but I've had quite a bit of caffeine and I'm ready to go. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, this is an unusual early morning podcast. Binksy just woke up. I just finished work. So it should be a nice, weird mixture of tired energy. So
Yeah,
this is good. This is good. Well,
we're
let's
ready.
jump right.
Let's do it.
We are ready. We were a little goofy right before we hit record. We were in like a full fit of laughter already. So this should be an interesting show. All right, let's jump right into it. So we're going to discuss each team's performance last year, their outlook for this upcoming season, and we're going to highlight some key players, assess their value based on their ADPs, and we'll also give you a potential sleeper and someone to punt for each team. So we're going to start with the worst for first the worst, the Anaheim Ducks. And boy, were they the worst last year. They were 32nd in the league. They were 32nd in every shot and chance generation stat category. Everything. Corsi for percentage, scoring chances for percentage, dead last in all of them. They were 25th, a little bit better in 5v5 shooting percentage at 7.94. So actually, there may be a bit of positive regression there. That's pretty bad. That's unsustainably bad, actually. And they were 19th in 5v5 save percentage at 912, which is actually their best, pretty much their best attribute is their goalies held their own. John Gibson played well. Lucas Dostal played pretty well when he played. They were 31st in power play percentage, not the worst, but they were 32nd in power play shooting percentage. So, and then their power play shot and chance generation was actually closer to around 22nd in the league. So, their power play was actually probably a little bit better than it showed. They were, below average, but super unlucky. So, in terms of shots just not going in. So they may be slightly better, and that's unsurprising just because they have like a decent amount of talent at the top of their lineup. So I don't know. Is there anything other than that? Is there anything positive about this team, Binksy? Like what about schedule wise? Do you have anything for us here?
I mean, that is an absolute massive positive for them. They are again the off night winner in the league, this time with a huge margin. The range of those amounts being 20 to 43, they are the absolute top at 43 off nights. So you're definitely going to be able to fit these players that you're drafting and adding into your lineup. They are also, and this is another one, going to be excellent for your streaming options. Those of you drafting Ducks like right out of the gate, they are the Sunday winner with a range of 3 to 18 games. They are again number one with 18 games. They also lead the league in Saturday games with 26, right? So they're slightly at the low end of back-to-backs. They've only got 11. That's right there in the median and average. And they have very low volatility in terms of their schedule from week to week, right? Like there's a bunch of teams out there they're going to be playing a high amount of 1 to 2 games a week and a high amount of 4 to 5 games a week, and they're actually going to maintain an even keel pretty much throughout the season. So the schedule is the best part of this team in my eyes. Like there's a lot of opportunity for them to like really like take hold of the lightest parts of your lineup.
100%. I think every single year they have the best schedule year long. Like they have the most off nights every year. Apparently, there's an agreement in terms of broadcasting schedule between them and the LA Kings, where the LA has a lot more heavy nights and Anaheim has a lot more light nights. I don't 100% know what that's all about, but I know that there's something there. Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's not a lot of fantastic fantasy options that you're going to want on this team, but well, let's look at the goalies first. So John Gibson last year had a 911 5v5 save percentage. He had a 63% start share, so played most of the starts. He shared the net with Anthony Stolars, who was pretty bad. And Lucas Dostal, especially near the end of the year. They gave him a little bit of a shot when Gibson was hurt. And Dostal showed out really well. He had a 920 5v5 save percentage. Stolars is no longer there. Alex Stalock was brought in from Chicago, who had a surprisingly awesome year with the Blackhawks. He was the only goalie that could stop a puck on that team. 913.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately for them. But his 5-5 save percentage was 913 with the Blackhawks. So I mean, he's used to playing for a terrible team. So I mean, you never know with goalies. He's an older guy. Never really found his way in the NHL really until last year. Last year was his best year in the league. He was actually out of the league for multiple years before they brought him back in. I think they were trying to be bad on purpose, but I mean, jokes on them. I mean, it worked out in the end. They still got
right.
But yeah. Anyways, so I imagine that they'll start with Gibson and Stalock, and Dostal will probably go down to the minors. I think they probably want to play the shit out of John Gibson, considering there's a lot of talk about him potentially being traded. So they probably want to play him as much as possible just to showcase his talent, and I mean, hopefully show that he's worth the $6 million that he's being paid, because I think that's the big hitch in terms of what's holding up potential trades. So he's going to play a lot. He's the only one of these goalies that's being drafted right now. His Fantrax ADP is 191.3, which is really good. I mean, it's okay value depending on your league settings. Like there are some leagues where you probably don't want Gibson at all. But then there's some where if your league really values volume, like in terms of saves, I mean, Gibson's a pretty valuable guy. He's probably going to be close to the league leader in saves just because Anaheim's going to give up a lot. So he may not get you a ton of wins, but he'll get those volume stops. So Binksy, are you drafting Gibson at all? Like he's a good 0G option potentially, or he is a 0G option. Do you think you'll be touching him at all or not really?
I think that if I am in a position to pull the trigger on a third goalie, he represents an immense value. Just like you talked about in leagues that kind of behoove that way of choosing a goalie. If you're just looking for absolute like just stuffing opportunity into your goalie slot, then obviously with the low amount of back-to-backs, not really going to give any time up, and playing on off nights and playing so much over the weekend that he's really going to give you the opportunity to like really push your goalie stats and categories over the edge as a second to third goalie. So am I pinning any hopes on him? No, I don't think he's going to any top of any goalie lists or must adds or anything like that. And, you know, I'm sure there are people out there who are kind of like pining away for him to get traded to another team. And honestly, I feel like this is the best opportunity for him to bring you value. So I'm not really excited that he has the possibility of going somewhere else. Like if you're going to make him a viable used player, this is the situation where he's going to do it.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm with you there. I'm probably not taking him as one of my main goalies, but definitely a fantastic streamer, probably even a stream and hold at times during the year. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I think I'm probably going for goalies that are on better teams, frankly. So in terms of the way that the lineup's going to shake out, Daily Faceoff right now has Adam Henrique, Trevor Zegras, Troy Terry as their top line. I don't think that's really unsurprising. I feel like that's probably going to be the way it'll shake out. Line 2, they've got Killorn, McTavish, Strome. Again, not much to say about that. Frank for Toronto may see some time up there. Other than that, I think that's pretty much how it's going to look. It's not a fantastic top six, but it's not the worst in the world. They're still going to put up some points, so there are some options there. Mostly streamers, but there are a few nice options. In terms of the power play units, they have PP1 right now as Henrique, McTavish, Terry, Fowler, and Zegras. I don't think that I really have much to say about that. That seems about right to me. So let's find some value for the skaters on this team. So Troy Terry, Nate's got him for 33 goals, 81 points. Blake's got him for 38 and 74. His ADP is 116.58. That's really good value for Troy Terry, I think. I think he's not really thought about a whole lot just because he plays for the Ducks. And I think he's a little bit underappreciated, and he's a fantastic player that I think if he stays healthy is going to be a great fantasy player this year. So I think 116 is fantastic value for him. Trevor Zegras also, his ADP is 116, around there. Nate's got him for 25 goals, 74 points. Blake's got him for 32 goals, 70 points. Decent value for Zegras. I think he has a pretty high ceiling to potentially even do better than that. I mean, yeah, he's a decent option depending on your league settings. McTavish is another option. Nate's got him for 22 goals, 55 points. Blake's got him for 23 and 59. His ADP is 229.65. Another guy whose ceiling, I mean, maybe higher than that. He's still a young guy. This is his second year in the league. And at 229, I mean, if you're trying to take a swing on somebody, I mean, he's going to get an opportunity. So he might be a guy that you could consider, especially with the favorable schedule season long. So, and not a guy you're going to have to give up much for. Adam Henrique is another guy. Nate has got him for 25 goals, 53 points. Blake's got him for 23 and 48. He's not being drafted, but he's a pretty decent producer when he's healthy. I think he just hasn't really been healthy a whole lot. But he gets really nice deployment, plays a lot on the top line, plays on the top power play. So, I mean, another guy that I think is a little bit underappreciated in terms of fantasy. Cam Fowler, Nate's got him for 9 goals, 45 points. Blake's got him for 11 and 48. His ADP is 204.49. If you're looking for a D at the end of your draft, not a bad option there, especially if he plays on the power play. Although I think there might be a few other options there that may be a little more favorable than Cam Fowler. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I mean, there's a few other options. Killorn's going at 212, Vetrano at 220, Gudis at 221. Gudis, actually, I feel like he's always leads the league in hits, and I feel like he may even reach new heights this year just because he's playing on a back end that doesn't have a ton of talent. He's been historically a third pair defenseman, but I could see him playing higher in the lineup and getting more minutes, so that means more hits. So I feel like Gudis is a really nice value in Bangers Cats leagues, and even in other leagues with banger weight. I think he could be not a bad option at the bottom of your lineup. But I don't know. What do you think? Who do you think is the best value pick here? I think it's probably Troy Terry, but I'd like to hear your opinion.
It's really hard for me to pinpoint value because I feel like, with the exception to Terry being kind of slightly above the rest of the group in terms of value over like where you're going to be drafting them, everyone else kind of is what you assume them to be, right? Like there's not really any surprises here with the Ducks. Like, not a lot going to shake out, and with exception to like the sheer ceiling of the youth movement in Anaheim, they just kind of are what they are, right? Like I think you're right about Gudis. I think he might be the surprise of the season. Like, as much of a bang monster as he is, they're going to play on defense quite a bit more than the team that he's been with for a while, right? Like,
yeah, that's another good point.
Not just hits, but blocks as well. And like you mentioned, he is that type of player. We're not talking about an offensive stalwart, and they don't have another defenseman that does that, right? We're talking about him moving up from third pairing to second pairing, and it honestly wouldn't shock me if he became a first pairing defenseman and just purely like stayed home, right? Like they
Yeah.
just completely push the other four up and let him really be the stalwart that just kind of holds that line all game long. So I think they're in a banger format. Obviously, he's going to be on your radar, but maybe a bit higher than you might expect for him, right?
Mhm.
I'm excited about the possibility of McTavish years from now. I don't really care this year, even at 230. Like I have drafted him in spots, but he's like a really easy drop candidate for me, even with the beneficial schedule. So I have seen you draft Terry in drafts that we've been in and teams that I've seen you build. And like I like the player, but I'm a little bit surprised that you're gung ho about it at 116. Like I know there's a dearth of talent at that wing, kind of at that portion of the draft, but like I don't have a selling argument for you. And before we move on, I'm hoping you'll sell me on Terry.
Yeah, I mean, I think he generates. I mean, I think the last couple of years he's proven that he's a top line talent and a point per game player. And I think at that point in the draft, getting a point per game guy I mean, it's fantastic. Like you're not finding a ton of those guys there, and the guys that you are guys that maybe you don't. Maybe people aren't don't realize that they are at that level. Guys like, I mean, a little bit later you got Brock Nelson, who's just sub point per game. He's getting drafted around like 130, 140. And he is I actually just drafted him in the cupful in the 10th round because I mean I went defense early, so I'm looking for guys later in the draft at forward that are going to be close to a point per game. So I mean, and I think Terry is that type of guy. So, and then like you said, at right wing, there's not a ton of right wing talent. So if you weren't drafting like guys like Kucherov or Nylander at the top of the draft, and you're a little stuck at right wing, I think Troy Terry's a great option there.
Okay.
In terms of punts, I mean, it's hard to punt anyone because everyone's being drafted so low or not being drafted at all. But I mean, if I had to pick one, maybe Cam Fowler. Like I think there's a ton of young options to play on
Hmm.
power play one. Jamie Drysdale, I think has a chance to play on the top power play. But there's also Olin Zellweger and Minchikov. And there's a legitimate shot that they could both make the team just because their defense is really, I mean, there's nobody back there. Zellweger has been paired with Gudis at camp at times, and Minchikov has been paired with Labushkin. Those are both guys that are going to play in the lineup. Like those are guys that are going to make the team. So the fact that those two young guys are playing with them, I mean, it could indicate that they're actually being seriously considered to make the team. So, and both of those guys have the offensive upside to run PP1. So you've got three other options other than Fowler that could potentially be on the roster that could run PP1. So, and guys that will likely be power play one quarterbacks of the future for this team. So, if you think about it that way, I think Fowler is a pretty fair punt, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
In terms of sleepers, I think McTavish is your guy. He's got the most upside that hasn't necessarily been reached yet. So I mean, I'm going with him. He's going to get a good opportunity. Last year, in terms of punts, we said Drysdale, and in terms of sleepers, we said Vetrano. Um, I think Drysdale was right. I mean, he was hurt the entire season, so he didn't really get any opportunity. But now I feel like Zellweger and Minchikov are kind of have kind of moved ahead of him in terms of the prospect ranks, and could get some opportunity there. So he may have missed his window in terms of running that power play and getting potential fantasy value. But I don't know. What do you think, man? Any punts or sleepers for you? Any differing opinions?
No, I completely agree with both of those guys. I think the bullet points are perfect for them.
Awesome. Love it. All right, let's move on to Calgary. So last year, Calgary, really disappointing year. They were fifth in the division. just missed the playoffs. But in terms of shot and chance generation, they were fantastic. One of the best teams in the league. They were second in Corsi for percentage, third in expected goals for percentage, and third in scoring chances for percentage. Then you go, wow, why were they so bad? They were 23rd in 5v5 shooting percentage at 7.95%. This is advanced stats, people. You got to look at this shit. They were also they were also 31st in 5v5 save percentage. Their goalies were brutal. 901 team save percentage at 5v5. That is bad. They were 19th in power play percentage at 19.8%, 27th in power play shooting percentage. So again, they could probably see some positive regression on the power play as well. And because they were top third in shot and chance generation on the power play as well. So again, like this entire team has positive regression written all over it. What are there any scheduling quirks you want to talk about here, Binksy?
So they're tied for fourth least in off nights with 24, and the second least amount of back-to-backs with only 8 on the season.
Yep.
And a bonus to that, really average weekly volatility for their schedule. What that tells me is that for those of you that haven't already anointed Wolf as the goalie to roster in Calgary, that Markstrom represents immense value for your 0G candidacy at an ADP of 163.44, right? Like,
yeah,
he's going to get all of the schedule opportunity in the world, and provided that Wolf doesn't like set Alberta on fire. That was so many puns. Completely unintentional. Don't have the brain power to kick off puns like that this early in the morning, but just immense value there for your zero G candidacy. And provided that he can return to form, maybe not Vezina form, right? But provided he can turn to starter level form and the team has that expected regression, then really, really, really good value for me. I mean, as far as like a short list for 0G goes and where I'm excited to draft starting goalies in the NHL, he sits like right in that top 3 for me. Like, it's arguably number 1, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I totally agree with that. I think all he's got to do is be league average, and like he doesn't even have to be fantastic. He just has to be league average, and then he's gonna provide you immense value. At that ADP. I mean, his 5v5 save percentage last year was 898. Vladar was 906, so also pretty bad. Dustin Wolf in one game, 947. But that's one game. I mean, he's been the goaltender of the year for 2 years in a row in the AHL. So I mean, he's an incredible prospect and is the starter of the future. Definitely. You may even see Vladar get moved. I've heard a lot of talk about that around the league. So Wolf may make an appearance. So I mean, if Markstrom falters, I think he's waiting in the wings, ready to go. But I think Markstrom will bounce back and hopefully, like you said, if everyone else kind of positively regresses, like it seems like they probably will, that's Markstrom's going to be in pretty good shape, and that's probably going to make him feel pretty good. Okay, in terms of the lineup for skaters right now, Daily Faceoff has Huberdeau, Lindholm, Sharangovich, Dubé, Kadri, Coronado as their top 6. I think that there's been some interesting line combinations at camp. Mangiapane may get in there. Matt Coronado has looked very good so far in the preseason. I think he had a hat trick in their first game when they won 10-0 against the Canucks. But he's been generating a ton, even when he's not playing with NHL caliber line mates. And Jake Peltier is another guy that I think may get into the top 6 there. But yeah, and then their power play right now, we've got Mangiapane, Kadri, Lindholm, Huberdeau, Anderson. I feel like that is pretty likely to stay that way. So not a bad looking power play, especially if they're trying to get Huberdeau going and they keep him on PP1. All right, so let's find some value with these skaters. In terms of projections, the number 1 guy that Nate and Blake have is Elias Lindholm. Nate had him for 31 goals, 70 points. Blake had him for 33 goals and 73 points. He does some pretty good things peripherally. He hits and he shoots. So that's probably why he projects a little bit higher than Huberdeau. His ADP is 104.2, so not a bad option at center. In the middle rounds of the draft, Elias Lindholm, certainly being drafted later than he was last year. Jonathan Huberdeau, Nate's got him for 21 goals, 82 points. Blake's got him for 32 and 87. His ADP is 81.81. I'm not sure. I mean, I would hesitate to pick him at this spot. I find that there are other people that are a little bit more excited than me about Huberdeau at this point in the draft. So I'm not sure that I would be pulling the trigger, but I understand why other people would. Nazem Kadri, Nate's got him for 27 goals, 59 points. He hits and he shoots quite a bit, so there's some really nice peripheral value with Kadri. Blake's got him for 31 goals, 68 points, so a nice little bounce back for Kadri. His ADP is 149.08, so I think could potentially bring you even more value than Elias Lindholm, going 50 spots later and potentially getting, I mean, if he bounces back, could get close to Lindholm's point totals. Mangiapane, Nate's got him for 35 goals, 58 points. Blake's got him a little bit less at 29 and 52. His ADP is 230.56. Now, Mangiapane, not sure where he's going to play in the lineup. If he's in the top 6 and top power play, I mean, this is incredible value for him. So 230, I mean, that's right at the end of your draft in most leagues. So that's not bad at all. Michael Backlund, Nate's got him for 26 goals, 51 points. Blake's got him for 23 and 55. His ADP is 216. Rasmus Anderson, Nate's got him for 9 goals, 50 points. Blake's got him for 10 and 54. His ADP is 126.6. I mean, if you're fading D, like some people are this year, I've heard about that strategy. It's not something that I employ, but Anderson's a pretty good target in the middle rounds of your draft. I think he'll get you a pretty good value. Binksy put here that he had a 56% power play share last year. And I think that'll probably continue. They seem to be pretty high on Anderson on the power play there. Uyghur brings pretty good value. Nate and Blake have him for around 40 points. He gets really good peripherals, shots, hits, blocks. His ADP is 154. Pelchier, Nate's got him for 25 goals, 52 points. Blake's got him for 22 and 44. He's not being drafted, so that's another guy that if you want to take a swing at the end of your draft on a guy that could potentially break out. Pelchier, I mean, looked pretty good in his short stint last year. Noah Hannafin, Nate's got him for 40 points. Blake's got him for 39. His ADP is 209.7. So another guy, another D that you could get close to the end of the draft. So there is immense value on this team. Like I think that people are sleeping on the Calgary Flames just because of how poorly they performed last year. I think almost everyone is primed for a bounce back on this team. In terms of value, I'm tempted to say Kadri. I feel like at 149 and potentially 60 to 70 point player with that peripheral floor. I feel like that is probably the best value on this team. Do you agree with that? It seems like you agree with that.
I absolutely do. Like, we had all of this talk in the previous offseason about what we should expect with his transition to Calgary and how hard that he was going to regress coming away from that Avalanche offense. And obviously that came to fruition, right? But it was so extreme, the difference from Colorado to Calgary in last year's season, right? In their output and their luck metrics. And he still was pretty successful, right? He still was putting up a ton of shots. We're talking about an average of 257 over the last 2 seasons. So only a 20 shot total drop. And, he did play 11 more games in that season. So you can account for that. But he also did it with 2 minutes less time on ice going from Colorado to Calgary last season, right? So if he can bump up a minute and still play 82 games, then it's entirely possible that his shot total hits 275, 280. If they really go crazy, maybe more than that. And for a center that you're getting in what should be a better offense, to be able to draft him at 149 seems like a smash to me.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of a punt, I don't think I'm punting anyone on this team. I mean, I mentioned I'm probably not drafting Huberdeau unless he drops a little lower than his ADP. I think he's definitely going to bounce back. I just don't love his peripheral floor. So if I'm in a straight points league, I think I'm probably happy drafting him in that spot. But anything else, I'm still a little bit hesitant. But last year, I said, in terms of a punt, I said Blake Coleman. You said Mackenzie Weegar. So that was actually a really good call on your part. I don't think I agreed with that, but that ended up, I mean, being a great call. And then in terms of a sleeper this year, I've got Jake Peltier. He's I think he may play in the top 6. It looks like it's not really shaking out that way currently. It actually seems like they're a little higher on Matt Coronado, and honestly, I think he might be a potential sleeper too. I wasn't sure that he would make the team, but it looks like they're pretty high on him, and they're playing him with some good players here in the preseason. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I mean, Peltier in his stint last year with the team, he had really nice underlying numbers, even though he didn't produce a ton in terms of counting stats and points. Does that sound familiar? Like anyone else? Like every single other play on this team. So yeah, I expect him to be pretty solid if he gets that opportunity. Last year we had said Tyler Toffoli as a sleeper because I felt like people were sleeping on him, and he had a career year, so that we were definitely right about that. So yeah, any other comments on punts and sleepers? Any other names you got here?
I think at the ADP and the way it's been creeping up for Jonathan Huberdeau, that's likely like the obvious punt for me. But the real punt for me on Calgary, because like you said, there's a huge amount of value to be found across this lineup. But the actual punt for me will be, and this is slightly based on the way I choose to build my lineups, and I tend to go a little bit earlier for a bulk of my defensemen. But I'm just going to avoid the defense here because you're going to have to pay up to draft 2 to 3 of them. And as much as Anderson kind of, for the most part, owned the power play share last year, and as much as they should be better as a whole on the power play, I just want it to be someone else's headache. And by the time that you're drafting these guys 126 plus, 154 plus, Hannafin at 209, I'm going to leave that to be somebody else's problem and watch it flesh out throughout the season. And if I start noting some serious indicators that I'm going to be able to buy low on somebody and see that really kind of work itself out throughout the season, then I'm definitely interested in doing that. But I don't really want to draft these guys.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. All right, let's go to the Edmonton Oilers. So they were second in the division last year, 7th in Corsi for percentage, 6th in expected goals for percentage, and 6th in scoring chances for percentage. They were 8th in 5v5 shooting percentage at 9.14%, which is just slightly above what you expect in terms of league average. So that's pretty good. I don't think that there's going to be necessarily any negative regression there. They were 15th in save percentage, which is surprising considering how poorly Jack Campbell played. That just means Stuart Skinner really, really played well, and he did. They were obviously, everyone's talked about this ad nauseum. First in power play percentage, first all time, 32.4%. Their power play shooting percentage was 19.73%, which is almost 2% higher than the next highest team. So really high power play shooting percentage. So probably a little bit of negative regression there, but they were still top 5 in scoring chances for and expected goals for on the power play. So, I mean, they're still going to be a killer power play. They're probably still going to be the best in the league next year. Yeah. So let's talk about schedule, Binksy.
They are holding on 10 back-to-backs, which is tied for 4th. The pack starts to meet up a little bit right there, but that's right on the higher side. They have 31 off night games, which is seventh, which doesn't really factor in for me because if you're rostering Oilers players, you're going to be starting them pretty much, right? So it's noteworthy, but not really a deciding factor. And they also have an average schedule volatility, so a relatively normal schedule. The back to backs is going to lean that tandem kind of towards the incumbent starter, but as bad as Campbell was in stretches last year, and as much as I hate to crown him already, it really does feel like Skinner's net to me. Provided he doesn't just like completely stumble out of the gate, I think it's really going to be another 60-40 year. And I think if Skinner is really, really good, if he has hot stretches, then that could even push to like 65% in the share. So I don't think the schedule is really going to sway anything for them. And as much as that tandem in name is an even split, in track record and the way that they have been trending recently, I think it's absolutely Skinner's net.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think 60-40 is probably a fair assessment. I think they're going to give Campbell a good opportunity to feel good and feel comfortable, just because he has the huge contract. So I think they probably will still want to play him a good amount. But yeah, Skinner's the guy right now. So unless he really really struggles, like he said, I mean, I think it's his net for sure. He had a 926 5 save percentage compared to Campbell's 896. So quite yeah, not good. Campbell, I felt bad for Campbell. He was really really struggling last year. But Skinner's ADP 114.29. So I mean, in the mid rounds, still a little bit higher than I'd like to take a goalie. And then Campbell actually is being drafted right now at 225.21. So all those zero Gers banking on Jack Campbell to have a little bounce back season and potentially take that starting role back. So I think that there is a possibility that does happen. But I mean, I don't, at this point, I'm not banking on that at all. Maybe I take Campbell as a third goalie or something like that at the end of my draft if he's still there. But yeah, I mean that's definitely where I would be going. I think I'm probably staying away from Edmonton goaltenders, just because of where they're being drafted. But all right, let's take a look at the lineup. Let's take a look at some skaters. Right now, Daily Faceoff has Evander Kane, Connor McDavid, Connor Brown as the top line, and then RNH, Draisaitl, Hyman as the second line. No surprises there. Power play, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, Bouchard, McDavid. Also no surprises there. Not really even worth commenting on. That's who they're going to go with. Why fuck with what's working, right? So, and let's find some value here. Connor McDavid. Nate's got him for 56 goals, 144 points. He gets shots, he gets hits. He's the best power play point player in the league. Blake's got him for 54 goals, 145 points. So they're both on the same page here. He's going to have another Hart Trophy level season. His ADP is 1.02 in Fantrax. So that's basically the only people that aren't drafting McDavid overall are people that are just like joking around in mock drafts, basically. So, I mean, I would argue that he is probably the best value because just having him on your team is like a cheat code. So like even at one, I think that's still a smash value. But yeah, I mean, we'll maybe talk about players other than McDavid here because he's the obvious choice. Leon Draisaitl, Nate's got him for 52 goals, 127 points. Also another power play point god. Blake's got him for 50 goals, 129 points. His ADP is 2.46, so most people are taking him right after McDavid. Evander Kane, Nate's got him for 35 goals, 61 points. He gets tons of shots, tons of hits. One of those players that could get 250 shots and 200 hits as well, which is pretty crazy if he's scoring 60 points. Blake's got him for 35 goals, 67 points. His ADP is 56.34. I'm a little nervous about Evander Kane just because he's only really going to get 5v5 time. And the bulk of Edmonton's offense is comes from the power play. So that, I mean, I think if he stays healthy, I think 60 points is pretty reasonable. But at that point in the draft, I mean, in a straight points league, I'm definitely not. I'm definitely like fading Kane at this position. Bangers Cats is a different story. I think he's should definitely be considered here, just because of the peripheral value that he brings. Zach Hyman, Nate's got him for 34 goals, 72 points. Blake's got him for 34 goals, 78 points. His ADP is 48.54. I think that's probably right for Zach Hyman. You're not getting him at value this year. Like last year, he was getting picked like past pick 100 and ended up bringing great returns to whoever's drafted Zach Hyman. But we all know he's a good player now. We can all agree he can score. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, Nate's got him for 29 goals, 80 points. Steep regression, but still a solid year. Blake's got him for 27 and 79. His ADP is 48.98. Still don't know that I'm really stoked about RNH at that position, to be honest. I think I would probably be fading him. Evan Bouchard, Nate's got him for 12 goals, 61 points. Blake's got him for 16 goals, 68 points. His ADP is 41.19. I think that, man, if he shows out, this is good value for Evan Bouchard. But he is, I mean, Nate and Blake talked about him on their high risk, high reward episode, and I think he's kind of the epitome of that. Darnell Nurse, Nate's got him for 11 goals, 41 points, and really good peripherals. Blake's got him for 14 goals, 44 points. Yeah, I mean, you said he only had one power play point last year. He's probably their number 2 option on the blue line for the power play. So if Evan Bouchard goes down, I think Darnell Nurse is probably quarterbacking there. So in that way, that's kind of exciting. But I think it's really the peripheral floor which is why, and the 5v5 production really, which is why Darnell Nurse gets drafted at an ADP of 100.59. He still does bring pretty good value. So in terms of value, these players, who is your value choice? I mean, I think McDavid and then the potential of Evan Bouchard are probably the best values here. But I mean, there's some pretty significant risk with Bouchard. I mean, this is an interesting conversation actually to have about this team because everyone wants an Edmonton Oiler.
Right.
Everyone wants a piece of that power play. So who do you think brings the best value here, Binksy?
I think it's probably Nurse for me that is actually bringing value, right? Like McDavid is a given in his draft position. Draisaitl is a virtual lock in his draft position, right? Based on the dual eligibility, he gets that slight bump against other players you're weighing him against. You're going to have to overpay for Kane. You're especially going to have to do it in a banger format. You're going to have to overpay for Hyman based on the hype. You're going to have to overpay for RNH, especially at a center heavy position, right? When you can be fading that. Bouchard, you're absolutely going to have to overpay for it. And this is a conversation being had across hockey and fantasy hockey right now. Like his floor is excellent. His ceiling could possibly be the best in the league based on the situation and the output that we've seen in Edmonton with Barry gone, right? But the only player that actually represents any value for me in Edmonton has to be Darnell Nurse. Like huge peripheral floor, 6 straight seasons above 100 and 100 in those categories. And all 8 years he's paced above that, right? Is almost a guarantee to be really, really strong peripherally. And he is going to get quite a bit of ice time, even if it's not power play ice time, right? So the floor is absolutely there for him. And just like you said, if anything happens to Bouchard, right, injury or otherwise, if he just has an absolute like torrid start to the season, it's terrible, then you're getting a huge amount of value at pick 100, right? I'm not advocating that you draft based on hoping that Bouchard gets injured, but to be able to draft him as a 3rd or 4th defenseman for me around the 100 mark and the possible upside of that in Edmonton is huge, right? Like you're going to get pretty much expected value from this team with exception to Nurse, and the ceiling kind of opens way up if anything happens for him. So I see a bunch of value there with Nurse, and I've seized it over and over and over again in drafts.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Absolutely. Um, and then in terms of punts, I kind of mentioned Kane in a points league. That'd be my punt, just because he's not going to get power play time. Last year, we said Jesse Puljujarvi, and that ended up being a good pick. Unfortunately, I like Puljujarvi. I hope he still ends up on a team and succeeds, but it's not looking good right now. My sleeper is Connor Brown. That's the only one I'm interested, other than the names that we mentioned. I'm not sure if his ceiling is really that high, but if he plays it with McDavid, that's always going to be interesting. So that's a guy that I'm going to be watching for sure. Last year, our sleeper was Tyson Barrie, because man, he was getting faded hard. People were all on the Evan Bouchard train, and then he ended up playing on the power play for most of the year until they traded him. So he brought some pretty good value for most people, and really played pretty well in Nashville at the end of the year too. So that ended up being a decent choice. So any other thoughts here, Binksy, on punts and sleepers?
No, I totally agree. I like it.
Awesome. All right, LA Kings. They were third in the Pacific last year, sixth in Corsi for percentage, ninth in expected goals for percentage, and 10th in scoring chances for percentage. So a pretty decent team across the board. They were 22nd in 5v5 shooting percentage at 8.14%. So actually could see some positive regression there in terms of their team shooting percentage, and 22nd in save percentage. That's actually better than I thought, because they had really terrible goaltending for a good chunk of the year. Like not even NHL, not even AHL caliber goaltending, like literally like not professional goaltending at all from Peterson and Quick. But yeah, they were 22nd in save percentage at 907 5v5. They had the fourth best power play in the league at 25.3%. They were sixth in power play shooting percentage, and it actually had like middling shot and chance generation stats. So may actually see negative regression on the power play. But I mean, we'll see about that. And then in terms of their goalies, Phoenix Copley had a 918 at 5v5 save percentage last year. His ADP is 214. And then Cam Talbot had a 903 with Ottawa last year. He struggled with injuries and just playing. He just overall poor play. Had a couple. He had some good outings, but had a couple just disastrous ones, which really hurt his save percentage. So he's going at 222, so a little bit lower than Phoenix Copley. But I think he's still a legitimate option there. I'm higher on Cam Talbot than most. He played really well in Minnesota. Where they had a much better defensive system than Ottawa did. And I actually predicted at the start of the year, when I was writing articles for the website, that Cam Talbot probably wasn't going to play very well in Ottawa's system. That there was a potential for him to fall off quite a bit, because everyone anointed him the starter at the start of last year for Ottawa. And I was like, I don't know, guys. Like, I feel like Forsberg has a pretty good opportunity here. Obviously, nothing really worked out there in terms of their goaltending. But I think Talbot with the LA Kings may surprise some people. So he's a guy that I would be looking at probably as like a third option, just because this is going to be probably a straight tandem. So in terms of scheduling, what do you got here, Binksy, for the LA Kings?
So it's relatively non-noteworthy. They have an average amount of off-night games. They have an average amount of back-to-backs. What is really indicative for their schedule, pretty high volatility for them. They've got 6 weeks of 2 or less games and 7 weeks of 4 or more games. So it concerns me for the players that I've been really excited to draft from the Kings, your Arvidssons, your PLDs, in spots, Drew Doughty as well. It doesn't really show me anything as far as the goalie tandem goes. Like, it's a pretty average schedule, with exception to the highs and lows of amounts of games played. So, other than me not really having a ton of faith in Phoenix Copley, the schedule doesn't really change anything for me. But I do have concerns about being able to fit in the players that I want to roster that have the upside that I'm excited about from the Kings. My ability to actually put them into my lineup week in and week out is kind of scary for me. Like I have just been drafting the absolute shit out of Victor Arvidsson, and I'm concerned there's going to be a lot of weeks where he's playing but isn't cracking my lineup at that wing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, and great advice for people that are thinking about drafting LA Kings. In terms of their skating and the deployment, Quinton Byfield, Anze Kopitar, Adrian Kempe are making up the top line currently on daily faceoff. That's kind of what they were rolling with at the end of the year last year. Line two, this is where it's really interesting. They've got Kevin Fiala, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Arthur Kaliev. I'm really excited about this line, actually. Kevin Fiala, obviously, I mean, Nate and Blake have him projected to be the top scorer on the team. And then with Dubois at center and Kaliev just being the advanced stats monster that he is, and really getting a chance to potentially get some time on ice and play with actually legitimate players. I really like this for Kaliev. I'm surprised that not more people are talking about this. As soon as that trade happened, where Iafallo and Gabe Velarde were out of town, I'm like, this is going to be nice for Kaliev. Like that, there's not as much wing depth or clogging up of the depth chart here, and I'm just like, that means only good things for Arthur Kaliev here. So I'm really high on him as a sleeper. Spoiler alert. And then their third line is Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, Victor Arvidsson, which last year was their second line. So really, they added a second line here in the offseason. Kind of, sort of. They've created a new second line. And so Arvidsson plays on that third line, but then on the power play, they've got Arvidsson, Kopitar, Kempe, Doughty, Fiala. So that's where Arvidsson gets some pretty nice value playing on that top power play. And I don't see them really straying from that unless Kaliev really explodes and takes somebody's spot on there. But yeah, any other notes in terms of the deployment?
So deployment wise, looking at this lineup, right? You look at Trevor Moore and Deneau and Arvidsson, that seems pretty well cemented as their quote unquote third line, right? They're
Yeah.
so deep that you just kind of assume that it's going to be relatively even in the time on ice, right? So it feels bad to say third line players, but it's, as we've seen with all of their wings and centers, like there's viability all the way down. But we're talking about a quote unquote second line with Fiala, PLD, and a burgeoning Kaliev. And as much as they defer to Kopitar and Kempe and they're excited and hockey is excited about Quinton Byfield, I feel like if that second line really explodes, then they become kind of the de facto first line, right? Like it's emotionally, like these veterans, these longtime Kings, these high draft picks for the Kings, they seem like a line one, but I feel like that line two could really easily become their like actual top line. And, even if they're not starting every game at puck drop, they could absolutely just take over and be the offensive force and actually take over a bulk of the minutes, right? Like there's so much value and upside here. I'm stoked about the Kings this year.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they've got two legitimate offensive lines. Like, I think they have a very, like, one of the better top six forward groups in the league. All right, let's try and find some value with these skaters. So Kevin Fiala, Nate's got him for 31 goals, 86 points. Blake's got him for 32 and 85. His ADP is 51.54. I think that's actually potentially decent value for Fiala, but probably about where you should be taking him. Kempe, Nate's got him for 37 goals, 65 points. He gets shots, he gets hits. So pretty nice peripheral floor there for Kempe. Blake's got him for 38 goals, 72 points. His ADP is 67.8. I feel like that's a little early for Kempe. I'd probably be a little more comfortable taking him a little later, but I I'm not opposed to taking him there. I guess that's what I'd say. Kopitar, Nate's got him for 22 goals, 70 points. Blake's got him for 21 and 71. So a little bit lower than where he was projected last year. His ADP is 115.75. I mean, that's probably about right for him. I think he's one of those centers that you should be considering if you faded centers. Pierre-Luc Dubois, Nate's got him at 27 goals, 59 points. Blake's got him at 27, 54. I think the ceiling is definitely higher than those projections, especially if he's playing with Fiala, who's just an offensive monster. His ADP is 102.92. He's got a pretty nice peripheral floor too. He hits a bit, so there's definitely that. He also has dual eligibility, so I feel like his value is a little bit. He has a little bit more value than Kopitar in that way. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Dubois at this spot in the draft. Arvidsson, Nate's got him for 24 goals, 50 points. Blake's got him for 30 and 71. So quite a difference there in terms of those projections. And his ADP is 141.49. Obviously, if his point totals are closer to where Blake's projecting him, that's really good value. But if they're closer to where Nate's projecting him, not the best. Not the best there. Although if your league values shots, I mean, he shoots the lights out. So Drew Doughty is the other guy I wanted to touch on. Nate's got him for 9 goals, 51 points. Blake's got him for 11 and 50. Gets pretty nice peripherals. His ADP is 116.02. I almost think that he's probably the value pick here. I don't think that he has a much higher ceiling than 51 or 50 points, but I do think he's a lock on PP1. A lot of people are talking about Brant Clark potentially supplanting him. I don't think that happens unless Doughty gets hurt. Like I think he's still the guy there. So I think Doughty may be the value pick here, but honestly, a lot of these guys I think are being drafted around where they should be. So I don't know that there's necessarily a ton of value in terms of their ADPs. So I don't know. What do you think, man?
I completely agree with that sentiment. All of these players are going right where I would expect them, with exception to PLD, right? At 102, I think he represents a slight value, and more so if you have really faded your centers, right? To come back to the well around the 100 mark and to be able to get PLD, who is going to get power play time, who got a big contract, who is in a happier situation than he's been in recent years. He's been really consistent over that time period with Winnipeg. 200 plus shots in the last 2 years, 18 plus minutes on ice over the last 2 years. Doesn't give you a ton peripherally, but that's not really what I'm expecting from him, right? So I feel really good about his possibility to surge over 60 points in this offense, and with the way that I kind of expect them to highlight him a little bit, right? Like, again, I feel like you don't bring in big name free agents for nothing, and for at least a little while they're gonna defer to him a little bit more than they might necessarily should. So, Nate has it at 27 goals and 59 points, and that's basically just carryover from last year, which is a little bit surprising to me, right? Because new team, new situation, arguably better talent down the lineup. So I am most excited about PLD. I don't know that any one of them represent tremendous value, but I think PLD is the one that has the highest chance of, come season review time, being the one that surged far above the projection mark.
So in terms of punts, I don't know that I'm punting anyone. I had Dubois on here just because I felt like his ceiling wasn't super high, and that was before I found out that they're running him with Fiala. I think that's a really nice situation for him, and especially if they're like a line that's like made for offense. I think that's really good for Dubois, and his potential value. So I don't think that he's necessarily a punt. Last year we had Arthur Kaliev as a punt. I think people were really pumped about him as a potential sleeper last year, and I was like, I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. I don't think there's enough room in the lineup. We were right about that, But this year, I'm on the fucking Arthur Kaliev train, baby. Choo choo, let's fucking go. Arthur Kaliev for a breakout. He's my sleeper. In case you were wondering, last year, our sleeper was Victor Arvidsson. I mean, I don't know that he's really considered a sleeper, but I mean, he's criminally undervalued every year. I think he's always the forgotten one. But he's pretty steady in terms of like 60-point pace, lots of shots, plays on power play one. But yeah, I mean, this year it's for me, it's Kaliev. I'm just feeling really good about this guy. I just acquired him in a dynasty league that I'm in, and I'm feeling really good about it. I don't know. What do you think about punts and sleepers, my friend? Nate's got him. Nate's actually got him for 41 points. I think he's going to hit more than that. That was before we found out that he's going to potentially play on line 2. And his ADP is 279 on Fantrax right now. So you can pretty much get him with your last pick of the draft in any league that you're in. I don't know, bud. What do you think?
I like the upside. My gut says to me it's more likely that it's Arvidsson on that second line wing, but I think either one are possible, and I think they'll probably try both. But immense value for Kaliev, right? Like you're going to have to pay up to draft Arvidsson. You're not going to have to pay heavily, but you're going to have to pay up to draft him, and you're not going to really pay anything for Kaliev. The deep sleeper for me is Quentin Byfield. This is a player that they trusted in the playoffs, even in his youth. He's getting top line minutes. So, provided that we don't see that shuffle really heavily, and with the talent, it's certainly possible that they could try a whole bunch of different combinations with these players. They've got some new inputs into the system. Like, I don't think it's any question that they're going to try a few different things to begin the season. But for a player that's, his ADP on Fantrax is like 300, like you don't have to do anything to get Quentin Byfield, and to get him as a center left wing, like the possibility of getting a line one player in this offense, pretty good. So I really like, this is kind of the total inverse from the team that we reviewed before this. Like, I think there's an immense amount of value to be found here, and it just kind of depends on like which horse you want to bet on,
Yeah, no, I'm with that too. I think Byfield shouldn't be forgotten either, and I'm potentially sleeping on him. So there you go. The San Jose Sharks. This will be quick, I think. They're 7th in the Pacific. They were bad last year. I mean, their Sean Chance generation was actually kind of middle of the pack for the most part. I think a big part of that was Erik Karlsson just going ape shit. But they were 14th in 5v5 shooting percentage, so pretty average. 32nd, so dead last in 5v5 save percentage. Had 893 as a team. Ugh. 5v5 save percentage. They were the only team in the league that had a team 5v5 save percentage below 900. So just brutal. And that's 7 points below 900. That's really bad. They had the 25th ranked power play and the 25th ranked power play shooting percentage. So didn't shoot at a very good clip on the power play there, but it's going to be completely different. No Timo Meier, no Erik Karlsson, no talent, maybe. Wow. I don't know that that's true. That's maybe a little harsh. There's some good young names here, but I mean, not a lot of talent in goal either. Kaapo Kähkönen, I think, is probably the 1A here. He had an 892 5v5 save percentage last year. And then Mackenzie Blackwood is the other guy. 903 5v5 save percentage in limited time with New Jersey. That's with New Jersey. So not great. I think this team's trying to lose. What do you think, Binksy?
I think they're a year late on the Bedard sweepstakes for sure.
Yeah, like, that's a problem.
They couldn't manage to get rid of Karlsson throughout the season, and they were just like, crap. Okay, fine.
Yeah, not good. Not good at all. All right, what about schedule, man? Are there any positives here?
So slightly high variation in their schedule week to week, but not anything really drastic. They are on the high end of back-to-backs with 14. Unfortunately, we don't really care, right? It's not really going to matter for them in terms of goalies. But they are going to be leaning on their veteran centers. And for them to have a high amount of back to backs is a little bit scary for me, right? Like they pretty quickly could have to go like pure youth movement just based on like durability issues, right? We're already seeing that with Couture, and we'll touch on that here in a minute. But they are also tied for the fifth least off nights in the league with 28. So on the high end of the
Oh
spectrum,
God.
which isn't like you just kind of associate those like high amount of off nights with these West Coast teams with Anaheim and etc. And that isn't the case with the Sharks. So for those of you reviewing these off night schedules, keep that in mind because your gut is going to be like, yeah, Sharks bad, West Coast. I'm going to be able to play these players on off nights, and you're really not, right? Like, so the schedule doesn't bode well for them. The high point would be back to backs, but you really don't care with these goalies.
Yeah. I'm not touching them with a 10-foot pole. That's for sure. All right, let's look at skaters. Oh boy. This doesn't get much better, honestly. Right now, the top six is shaking out as Barabanov, Hurdle, Kunin, Hoffman, Couture, Duclair. I think Philip Zadina will get in there. You got Michael Granlund. I mean, it's bad, dude. It's really bad. Fabian Zetterlund's another name. He's a name. But other than
He
that,
does play hockey professionally, doesn't he?
he does play professional hockey. Yeah. Right now, the first power play unit on Daily Faceoff, I don't think that this is what it's going to be. I think they're just guessing just because we don't know. They've got Hurdle, Couture, Zetterlund, Hoffman, McDonald. I think that's close. I think you probably swap Duclair in there for Zetterlund. And I mean, there's a lot of talk of one of their young defensemen quarterbacking the first power play. I know Victor Nuno is really high on Henry Thrun. I mean, other than that, I don't really know. Like who plays defense for this team? Mario Ferraro, Mark-Edouard Vlasic, Matt Benning, Radim Simek. I mean, Jan Ruda. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of the fantasy prospects for this team. It's not looking good for the Sharks. Is there any value? Logan Couture is week to week with an injury. We still don't really know if how long he's gonna be out. I think if they're trying to be bad, they're probably better off keeping him out. He's definitely the best player on this team. If in terms of fantasy value, he's a pretty good bangers cat player. Nate's got him for 26 goals, 60 points. Blake's got him for 27 and 61 over 82 games. He gets hits. He gets over 100 hits a year, which is nice. His ADP right now is 176.27. So, I mean, that's pretty good value. I think like you can pretty much expect him to get 60 points when he's healthy. And he gets extra peripheral, those extra peripherals too. Tomas Hurdle, I mean, he gets peripherals as well. Nate's got him for 26 goals, 59 points. Blake's got him for 25 and 64. Also gets similar amount of hits, maybe a few less. But like, who does he have to play with? Like he's been playing with Timo Meier for a few years now. And you wonder if that kind of has increased his value. I don't think he's ever played with, I mean, a talent. A group with this little talent. It's not good for Tomas Hurdle. I don't think I'm touching him at all. And then, I mean, maybe the one value here, William Eklund. He's probably going to make the team. Nate's got him for 21 goals, 46 points. Blake's got him for 15 and 42. His ADP is 242. So another guy, like if you want to take a swing on him at the end of the draft, you can. I think there's probably better options of guys to take swings on, but he's certainly going to get some opportunity and some ice time. And then Anthony Duclair is another guy that I think he's going to get a ton of opportunity and could potentially show out a little bit. His ADP is 222, so maybe there's some value for Duclair there. I don't know, man. Is it Eklund or nothing for value?
Prior to the injury note, for me, it was Couture or nothing.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
honestly, that was before I reviewed the schedule and I saw how few off nights that they were going to play. Because in my mind, I was like, you're going to get Couture at value. He's going to be the 1C. He's virtually all they have offensively. Hopefully he and Duclair work together and get some sort of system going between the two of them to provide some sort of value. But the injury concern, even though my gut is like, this is just them like softening a camp and off season for their like best veteran player, but there's really nothing to be excited about here. Like in name, I'm excited about Duclair getting, in theory, more opportunity, right? But we've also never seen him play with substandard talent. And as much as he is electric on the ice, he is coming off of an Achilles injury, right? That wasn't that long ago. So even at 222, like even at the right wing position, I'm not really excited about Duclair either, and I hate to be so dismissive of the Sharks, but I feel like the whole team is really just a punt. Like I really don't want to
Yeah.
be a part of anything they have going on.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I put Hurdle as my punt for the same reasons I mentioned before. Last year we said anyone not on PP1, and I think that was a good point. And then this year, I mean, last year our sleeper was Eklund. He didn't make the team, so it didn't work out. If I had to pick a sleeper, it would be Eklund. I don't know, maybe Henry Thrune if he ends up getting PP1, but like it's not looking good here. I think you're right. I think we punt this entire team into the sun. All right, let's move on. I don't want to talk about the Sharks anymore. Let's talk about the Kraken, the Seattle Kraken, the Seattle Streamers. They were fourth in the Pacific last year. Binksy's got a beautiful reverse retro 2.0 Seattle Kraken jersey, even though, as I mentioned off mic, not really retro. It's kind of weird, but it's a very nice jersey nonetheless. They were fourth in the Pacific last year, made the playoffs, got 100 points after just a brutal year in their inaugural season. They were fifth in the league in Corsi for percentage, 12th in expected goals for percentage, and 14th in scoring chances for percentage. So they were just throwing everything at the net. First in 5v5 shooting percentage, 10.34%. That is way too high as a team. It was by far the highest in the league. Like it wasn't even close. Almost a full percent higher than the next best team in terms of team shooting percentage. So probably gonna regress. And then they were 23rd in team save percentage. So that really, I think, kept them from being just an absolute dominant team last year, because every shot they were taking was going in the net, but every shot the other team was taking was also going in their net. There was a lot of 9-8 games. Well, there was at least one that I remember. Their team save percentage was 907 at 5v5. They had the 21st ranked power play last year at 19.8%, 15th in power play shooting percentage. So really, I mean, not really much chance of any regression there. And their shot and chance generation was actually pretty bad. So I feel like they were like close to the bottom of the league. So there's they should be rethinking their power play situation. I think I think they had kind of split the talent up and done two kind of evenly split power plays. I feel like loading up one unit is probably the way to go, but who do you really load it up with? They're kind of I don't know. They've got a ton of depth, but not a lot of like top end talent. Seattle Streamers, right? Philip Grubauer last year. Let's talk about the goalies. He actually surprisingly 5v5 had a 912 save percentage. Like I would have thought it would be a lot worse. I guess he must have had let in a lot of goals on the power play. And he only had 36 starts last year because he was hurt a bit, and because Martin Jones, frankly, at times was stealing his spot, or at least he was handing Martin Jones some opportunity because he was so bad at times. But his ADP is 193.05. He had a great playoff, and I'm betting on Philip Grubauer being a lot better this year. And he's definitely a 0G candidate that I'm targeting at the end of the draft. You got Chris Driedger, who didn't play last year. He's not being drafted. And then Joey Decord, who's another potential backup. He had a 908 5v5 save percentage, which was, I mean, better than Martin Jones, but still not very good. So, and I mean, there's people that know things about goalies that aren't super high on Joey Decord as a potential prospect. So, I think Philip Grubauer is the guy here. So I like him as a volume starter late in your draft on a team that's probably going to be pretty good. What do you think, buddy? Scheduling goalies? Are you drafting Grubauer? Are you targeting him? Let's yeah, give me your take here.
Schedule, yes. Grubauer, yes. Am I drafting him at 193.05? You're damn right I'm drafting him. Fewest back-to-backs in the league. Only 7 back-to-backs. They moved on from Martin Jones, which says to me, especially after he played well in bursts last year, they fully expect Grubs to be the guy, like 100%. Like this, it shows no signs of him sharing any net time. They have an average amount of off night games with 30, right? So definitely going to be able to slot him in, even if he's your second or third goalie. They have a very low amount of Sunday games with only 5, the lowest end of the spectrum being 3, right? So you're going to know whether you need a Sunday goalie streamer earlier in the week, and you're not really going to have to worry about finding out what you're going to get on Sunday evening with him. And they have 4 weeks of 2 or less games and 5 weeks of 4 or more games. So a very consistent schedule. I am just amped about the possibility of Grubauer being your 0 to hero this year. Like I talked about Markstrom being in the top 3 for me, and Grubauer is right there, right? Like the situation is perfect. The team is so strong through the middle. Like they like need to be better defensively. And after a playoff run that comes up short and not a ton of changes for them as a team, like I feel like we're going to see a stronger Seattle team, one that's less on the wide end of the outcomes that we saw throughout the season last year, and one where they're actually just winning consistently. I feel like we're seeing a very good team gel together. So I am really excited about that. The one drawback for me with Grubauer over the last 2 seasons, his first season in Seattle, a negative 26 goals above expected and a negative 9 last season, right? So, and in those 2 seasons, 10
a bit of
and
improvement.
11, 10 and 11 really bad starts back to back. So,
Yeah.
you know, for somebody that had 36 starts last year, for Grubauer to have had 11 really bad starts shows a lot of volatility, even if you're looking at just his GAA being sub 3, right? Like not terrible. He also had just incredibly bad portions of the season and 2 shutouts over the last 2 seasons in Seattle, and both of them were in the first year, right? So we talk about variability and expectations. Even with those goals saved above expected average, like I really expect it to be better for him. And the vote of confidence in moving on from Jones is another point in that for me.
All right, let's look at the skaters now. So daily faceoff, you almost have to look at the top 9 in Seattle just because of the way they roll their lines 5v5. So they got McCann, Beniers, Eberle together as the top line. I think that's probably about right. Then they got Schwartz, Wenberg, Burakovsky, and then Tolvanen, Gord, and Bjorkstrand. Pretty solid top 9. They're again one of those teams that I don't think. I mean, Dave Haxtell kind of rolls his lines the way that Rod Brindamore does. Makes a little more sense in Seattle than it does in Carolina, just because of the way that the talent is distributed. But still, I mean, the top end talent isn't getting a ton of ice time. But Daily Faceoff has the first power play unit as Burakovsky, Beniers, Eberle, Dunn, and Jared McCann, which I think that's a pretty decent top unit. I think you could maybe get Oliver Bjorkstrand in there in one of those spots. But other than that, like that's about as good as you could get in terms of loading up a top unit on this team. Yeah, so let's find some value with the Seattle Kraken here. So Jared McCann, Nate's got him for 32 goals, 69 points. Blake's got him for 30 goals and 66 points. His ADP is 112.55 on Fantrax. I mean, that's pretty decent value for McCann, especially since, I mean, mid 60s is probably what you should be expecting from him. I think his ceiling is higher than that. I just don't know that he's going to get the time on ice. I had some comments after I was talking down about McCann as like a potential negative regression candidate earlier this year. Had some comments saying that actually at the end of the season, he was getting more ice. He was getting closer to 18 minutes a game, which is pretty decent. But yeah, I think if they load up a top power play and have him as a trigger man, I mean, there's potential for him to kind of, I mean, get closer to the totals that he had last year. And in that case, I think his ADP is probably about right. Matty Beniers, Nate's got him for 23 goals, 61 points. Blake's got him for 24 and 59. His ADP is 152.39. I think that's pretty good value for Beniers, especially since, I mean, he's a guy in his second season, could potentially bust through those totals. So I like that for Matty Beniers. Oliver Bjorkstrand, Nate's got him for 26 goals, 52 points. Blake's got him for 30 goals, 59 points. His ADP is 221.26. So if he's a 60-point player, that's a great ADP for Oliver Bjorkstrand. I'm just not sure that he's going to get there with the deployment that he has right now. But at the end of the year, he was converting a lot better than he was at the start. He went through a crazy slump the first half of the season, and really kind of went on a torrid pace at the end of the year. Vince Dunn, Nate's got him for 10 goals, 55 points. Blake's got him for 11 and 55. His ADP is 100.33. That's probably about right for him. I mean, he's being picked earlier than any other player on this team. He's going to play the most minutes out of anyone on this team. I mean, I don't know. Andre Burakovsky, Nate's got him for 24 goals, 53 points. Blake's got him for 26 and 69. That's nice. First of all, that's quite a big difference in terms of their projections, which is interesting. His ADP is 220.58. I think he's probably the best value on this team. Before he went down last year, he was their leading scorer. He was pacing to be really, really solid last year. And I think there's potential for him to do that again. And if his ADP is 220, I think that's really solid, especially if he's getting 60 to 70 points. So I like that for Burakovsky. I think he's probably my pick in terms of value. And then you've also got Jordan Eberle. Nate's got him for 21 goals, 50 points. Blake's got him for 23 and 53. His ADP is about the same, 221.48. I mean, I don't really see him going much higher than 55 points. But he's probably more of a streamer. Adam Larson, his ADP is 166. He's got a really nice peripheral floor. Had a bit of an offensive breakout last year. I mean, you could see that again because I think he's going to get a ton of minutes here. But I mean, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about Adam Larson, to be honest. But he does. He's a really good Bangers Cats player. And then Eli Tolvanen is going at 239. He could potentially have a breakout too. I mean, another guy that shoots and hits a ton. But again, they're just rolling those lines there. So I don't really know what the ceiling is for any of these guys, even if they do break out. So I don't know, man. Who's your value pick on this team? I think mine's Burakovsky.
I think the value for me is probably Larson. And maybe that's, heavily weighted towards a banger format. But he's like the one player that's going to eat time on ice on this team. Like the high watermark for the players we mentioned is Matty Beniers at like 17 plus minutes, right? So if you're expecting any one of these players to just start chugging minutes and surge past their projection, it's pretty unlikely, right? Like who was it? It was Dennis Green. They are who we thought they were, right? Like they are who we thought they were. Like
Yeah.
there's not really a lot of surprises coming from this team. I feel like Seattle Streamers is very applicable. I like McCann a lot. I believe, ironically, a little bit more than you do in his ability to get up to that 70-point mark again. But I don't really want to pay up for it at 112. And I like Beniers, but in my experience, 152 is not where I've seen him go. Like I've seen him
Yeah.
go rounds earlier than that, and
Mhm.
I'm in, but it's going to be at huge value for me. Like it's going to be plus 152, and I've seen it minus 152 quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like just like you, I like Bjorkstrand, I like Burakovsky, I like Everly, but what I didn't like in rostering these players last year is that you just never knew who it was going to be, and you never knew who it was going to be at a really high clip, right? A super
Yeah.
high clip that virtually no one expects to happen again. So I feel like the variability in who is going to be scoring will stay, and the amount of scoring will go down, right? So
Yeah.
those aren't really, I don't really like my odds in investing in that. If I'm investing in just talent, I was so excited to see Tolvanen come to Seattle last year. I thought this is a perfect situation. They're going to be able to plug him at first and second line, and they just haven't done that. Like he looks to be a third line player for them, even though I don't necessarily agree with him being lower than Schwartz in the lineup. There's not really anywhere to go after that, even if that happens. Like it's really doubtful that he's going to take any time away from McCann. And even
Mhm.
if he does, it's so even across the board, right? So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to watch Tolvanen play for Seattle last year. I'm not super excited to roster him. So
Yep.
I like Seattle. I think that they're going to be phenomenal opportunities for you to stream hot players throughout the season. But in my drafts, the only player that I'm like really hunting for is Grubauer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. My punt this year is Vince Dunn. I just don't know that. I think I like other defensemen that are going around that ADP better than Dunn. I think they have higher ceilings, and I think he's going to regress a little bit. So that would be my punt. I'm not completely punting him, but I'm not picking him at 100. I just like other guys better. I like Seth Jones. I like um, yeah, just other guys. Darnell Nurse, I think, is getting picked at the exact same spot.
That was my first thought. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm going Nurse 10 times out of 10, and I've seen people get applauded for reaching for Dunn in drafts, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me because you're in that middle ground where I don't want defensemen where they're going at the
yeah,
ADP. Like way before that, perfect. Way
yeah,
after that, perfect. But
yeah, and
the only player
like,
that I want at that 100 mark is Nurse, and it's such a better situation.
and talking about reaches, like just before him, you've got Noah Dobson, you've got Jacob Chikrin, who are two guys I'm really high on. So I'm much more likely to reach for those guys than I am for Vince Dunn. Jacob Chikrin, by the way, watched him play a preseason game against the Leafs last night. Looked really, really good. Really good. They played him 30 minutes also. So
In a
get
preseason
ready,
game?
get ready for tons of time on ice for Jacob Chikrin. Uh, in terms of sleepers, I mean, I'm not really high on anyone as a sleeper. Like I said, I don't feel like anyone's ceiling is super high the way that they roll lines on this team. Last year I said Beniers. I did want to highlight. I was re-listening to our preview last year, and this is a quote that I had about the Seattle Kraken going into last year before this big pop. I said, I don't know why I'm so high on Seattle this year, but I am. I feel like they're going to bounce back. That's a direct quote from Josh. Just want to say I was right. They killed it. I expected them to make the playoffs. No, I didn't. I think I specifically said I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I just think they're going to compete. But they
They
did
did
better.
that.
They
They
did that.
absolutely competed.
All right, Vancouver Canucks. They were sixth in the Pacific. 23rd in Corsi for percentage, 25 in expected goals for percentage, and 24th in scoring chances for percentage. So pretty bad. They were seventh in 5v5 shooting percentage. So They convert at a high clip. That's not super surprising. They've got a lot of guys that are high efficiency shooters on that team. They're 28th in team save percentage at 5v5 at a 903. So really quite poor there. They were the 11th ranked power play. So again, they have some top level talent on this team offensively at 22.7%. 8th in power play shooting percentage. So, I mean, pretty high shooting percentage, but not crazy. They were 3rd in Corsi for, 9th in expected goals for, and 7th in scoring chances for on the power play. So, really quite good. Like their power play is likely going to be very strong next year. Their goalies, Thatcher Demko 5v5 had a 920 save percentage. He only had 32 starts last year just due to injury, but he's going to be a huge volume starter this year. His ADP is 108.51. I mean, I actually drafted him in a Bangers Cats league just last night in the 10th round because I mean I talked to you guys about this in the Discord just in one of our private group chats, but there's a part of the draft where I'm finding myself the guys that I value the highest around 100, 110, 120, the guys that I value the highest, I feel like I'm going to be able to get them the next time around. So I'm actually picking goalies a little bit earlier than I expected in the draft. So Thatcher Demko came to me and I'm like, wow, well, he's going to start a lot and he's going to get a ton of saves. May get a few wins here and there too, just because you don't really know what to expect with Vancouver. I think they're going to be terrible defensively, but I mean, they do have some talent on this team. So I really like Thatcher Demko going into next year. They've also got Casey DeSmith as a backup. He had a 914 5v5 save percentage with Pittsburgh last year. So actually a legitimate backup as opposed to Spencer Martin, who had an 888, one of the worst goalies in the league last year, and Archer Silovs, who had a 910 and is a highly touted goaltender, but he was in net for that 10-0 loss against Calgary the other night. So not a good start for him in this preseason, unfortunately. I think he allowed 7 of the goals, so not pretty. But I don't know. What are you thinking? Are you drafting Demko? What does Vancouver's schedule look like this year?
So, really positive things for the netminders. Only 9 back-to-backs, which is 3rd lowest in the league. Demko's not going to bleed any starts. They have only 22 off-night games, which is the 3rd lowest. Again, doesn't really concern you because even though DeSmith is a capable backup and certainly should be much more reliable than Spencer Martin, not really expected to give up a ton of starts throughout the season. And only 5 Sunday games. So you know what you're getting, whether you're going to need a streamer, you're already going to know that. So low volatility for them week to week. So I'm seeing incredible consistency in terms of schedule. Obviously, there are concerns about Demko being fully healthy throughout the season. There are concerns about their ability to play defense as a whole, but in certain fantasy formats, that might actually be a boon to your output, right? Like you might be really excited that he's going to take a lot of shots on net. So I'm excited about Demko. If you had asked me a month ago whether I was going to be drafting him in any spots, I'd have been like, no, right? Like you're going to
Yeah,
have to
me
reach,
too.
but the way that it has been going in the same way that you were surprised to be like, okay, this represents 0G value for me earlier than you expect, earlier than the kind of 10th round benchmark, which is like a really cloudy way of looking at 0G. That actually could be like the 0G value of the draft, even though, you know, looking at track record in 0G, you don't always feel great about choosing a goalie around the 100 mark. He actually could be really, really high value. So I am most excited that he, in the previous season to last year, had a plus 14 goals above expected average. And
Yeah,
last year dropped 16 points to almost -3, right? So lots of really bad starts last year. And the save percentage dropped 0.14, like pretty bad.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't absolutely terrible, right? So even at
Mhm.
his worst, still pretty much an average goalie, right? So lots and lots
Yeah.
to be excited about in the net for them.
If you look at the splits too, before his injury, his numbers were really bad, but then post injury, he actually was pretty comparable to the way he was playing the prior year. So you wonder how much he was hampered by something at the start of the year, or if his head just wasn't right. So I lean more towards him being the goalie that he was the second half of the year than the first half. Um, for no reason in particular. I mean, he could be terrible again next year. He's a goalie, so that's just kind of the way she goes. In terms of deployment for skaters, they got Beauvillier, Pedersen, Kuzmenko as their top line. That was the top line at the end of the year last year, so I imagine that's probably what they'll stick with. Then they've got Mikheyev, JT Miller, Brock Besser as their second line. They actually don't have as much offensive depth as I would have thought on this team. Looking at their depth chart, I'm not sure where Niels Hoglander is, but he's not on daily faceoff. I imagine that he'll probably make the lineup, I would think. They got Di Giuseppe, Dakota Joshua, Pod Coles, and Connor Garland. Yeah, not a great bottom six. Garland's a good player, but I think unless he's playing in the top six, I'm not really super excited about him as a fantasy player. Their top power play is going to shape out as Kuzmenko, Miller, Pedersen, Hughes, and probably Brock Besser, I would think. Daily Faceoff has Beauvillier there, but I imagine Besser is probably going to be that fourth forward there. So pretty nice top power play for them. I don't know, man. What do you think about their deployment?
I don't really know what to make of their deployment. Honestly, just like you, like in your mind, the Canucks are deeper than this offensively, and in reviewing the lineup, even with like the talent expectation of Hoglander and where that sorts out, like it really feels like it's kind of JT Miller or bust for me, because where Pedersen is going, I'm not super excited to draft him. I think he's a fine pick, but there's always three or four other players that I really want before him.
Yeah.
And Miller, point format, great. Category format, amazing, right? And where he's going in the draft, I feel fine with taking a multi-position eligible player, even though he's, a dedicated center. Um, and like Kuzmenko has the metrics, right, that we all expect, but obviously that's going to come back down to earth in I would expect droves, but maybe not. Maybe it's only slightly. And I'm excited about Besser, but it's going to be like pure top six for them, right? Like you're going to see pure top six and then like a sprinkling of Dakota Joshua on the ice, and you're not going to notice any of the rest of these dudes like at all,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's just like there's nowhere else to go, right? Like Beauvillier had some stretches for the Islanders last year, but I'm not excited about him even in a top line format. So like I want Miller, and that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you here. Pedersen. Well, okay, let's look at the value for these players. So Pedersen, Nate's got him for 41 goals, 87 points. Blake's got him for 39 and 92. His ADP is 13.23. I agree with you. There's other guys that are going at this ADP that I prefer over Pedersen. So yeah, if he's there at like 16, 17, 18, then I'm a little more excited about Pedersen. I think he's a legitimate second round guy. And could perform better than that. Like he has some nice peripherals too. But yeah, I don't know that I'm really excited about him at 13. Like there's guys like Tage Thompson, Kale McCarr. Um, yeah, those are the other guys that I'm a little more excited about there. Alex Ovechkin is another guy too. Um, so yeah, I mean nothing wrong with Pedersen at all. It's just at that ADP, I'm not super sure about it. JT Miller, like you said, I really like him. I really like the peripheral floor in terms of hits, at least. Doesn't shoot a ton, but Nate's got him for 32 goals, 87 points. Blake's got him for 31 and 88. I like him there. I like him as a potential 90-point player. his ADP 26.54. That's pretty nice for him. I'm not sure that presents like a ton of value, but I think that's about where he should be getting picked, like late second round, early third. And then in Bangers Cats, obviously that's a ton of value, but he's probably going higher than that in Bangers Cats. Quinn Hughes, Nate's got him for 8 goals, 76 points. Blake's got him for 9 goals, 81 points. I think there's significant potential for him to hit a point per game. His ADP is 61.53. They're going to use him a ton. He's going to play the power play. It's a good power play. He's just an assist monster with no peripherals. So yeah, I like the points, and in a straight points league, I'm really high on Quinn Hughes, but he's not a guy I'm really picking much at all. Another guy that I feel like people are higher on than I am, so I just am not taking him. Brock Besser, Nate's got him for 27 goals, 61 points. Blake's got him for 29 and 66. His ADP is 184.57. I think that's pretty good value for Besser. I'm just not sure that he has a very high ceiling. So there's probably other guys that I would want to swing on that could potentially produce a little bit more than that. I'm not even sure that he's a 60 point player. He's close to it. I think that's about where he should be. But yeah, I'm not super convinced about Brock Besser. Andrei Kuzmenko, Nate's got him for 27 goals, 62 points. Blake's got him for 37 and 67. His ADP is 115.19. I think that's a little high for Kuzmenko, especially with the potential negative regression. Doesn't really do a lot peripherally. Doesn't shoot. Doesn't get a ton of shots. Does not hit. Does not block. It's just points. So not excited about him at 115 at all. Philip Hronek. This is a really good value pick, I think, actually. Philip Hronek might be my guy. Nate's got him at 8 goals, 43 points. Blake's got him at 9 goals, 38 points. He gets some pretty good peripherals. He's the next man up on the power play if Quinn Hughes gets hurt, which he has been hurt in the past. And his ADP is 214.47. So you're getting him right at the bottom of your draft. You could pick him up as a bench guy. Although, like you said, Vancouver has a pretty shit schedule. So you kind of are hoping that maybe I don't know, if you pick a guy like Cale Makar, who has a lot of off nights, or Seth Jones, guys on teams that have a ton of off nights that are playing a little higher in your lineup, I think Hronek is probably a decent option at the end of the draft for a bench guy, or maybe just a really good streamer. But yeah, I think he probably has the most value on this team. Maybe Brock Besser. And then Anthony Beauvillier is getting picked at 234. I mean, there's potential value there just because he's going to play on the top line. So I like Beauvillier as well at the end of your draft there. I mean, who's your value guy here? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that there's a ton of value on Vancouver.
I think the only value is really represented with Beauvillier and the upside, right? Like, going to be a top line player, pretty well cemented into the first power play. Perhaps he gives that up to Besser, but not really Besser's game to play that position on the power play where Beauvillier is slotted, and we've seen him have success, right, with exposure before. The schedule is a bit worrisome for me because, like I said, like other than Miller, I'm not especially interested in their wings and forwards. And with the schedule, the players that I'm not especially interested in are probably not going to break my lineup, right? Like in reviewing Vancouver and looking over Kuzmenko and looking over the rate stats and the expected regression, expected drastic regression, I think we can say, like I'm looking ahead 7 weeks, 8 weeks from now, and I feel like our most asked question on a show 8 weeks from now is going to be, should I drop Kuzmenko? Right? Like, he's not doing this for me in the format. He's not getting enough ice time. His metrics are way down. Like, I'm not going to just like bury him and put the tombstone on it right now. But I feel like the chance of that happening to Big Koozie are really, really good. And I don't want to like poop on Blake's parade in that regard, but it feels more likely than not that he just comes like crashing down to earth, right? Especially
Yeah.
with teams kind of like gunning for him and his success last year. Like there are going to be some game plans that are like, we got to shut exactly what he does down so that we don't get bitten by his flash goal in the last 2 minutes of the game. So for me, like it's kind of Miller or bust. I like Hughes, but there are not a lot of fantasy formats out there that are making me choose him versus another defenseman where he's going. I think it's a fine value. I think he's a great offensive player, but with assists being really what he brings to the table, it really depends on the format whether he's viable to me or not. So the only player that I'm really like kind of on the fence about is Brock Besser, right? Like we've seen him have stretches of really good hockey, but at the same time, you know, they've both got him projected for over 60 points, and he's never done that before in 6 plus almost 7 years in the league, right? Like he's always been a 50-point guy, and he always shoots a relatively low percentage. He doesn't put up a ton of shots. He's not giving you a ton peripherally, right? So like it would be a player that I would take a shot on, but with the schedule, I don't think he's ever going to crack my lineup, right? So he's
Yeah.
a watch list guy for me. I think he'll be a great streaming candidate, but at 184, little bit too spicy for me.
So in terms of punts and sleepers, for the reasons I mentioned before, my punt's Quinn Hughes, just no periffs, no peripheral floor, and not a lot of goals. So yeah, he's probably my punt at the ADP that he is going at. Last year, my punt was Mikheyev. People were pretty high on him potentially playing in the top six. And I was like, no, dog. He shoots a lot, looks really nice. He's a fast player, does not convert, not a top six offensive player. He plays a lot better on the third line. So I mean, the same goals for this year. It looks like he's going to play in the top six, and it's not the best situation for him. As a sleeper, I've got Anthony Beauvillier. I did kind of mention before. Another point I wanted to make about him is that he led the team in individual scoring chances 4/60 last year. So that's an interesting stat there. He's always had decent underlying numbers, but he is going to be playing with the best offensive players he's ever played with. So for a guy that spent almost his entire career so far in Long Island, I think he may have a ceiling that don't know that he's capable of. So we're playing with Elias Pettersson. So last year we said Andrei Kuzmenko. I think we were absolutely right about that. There was no reason, other than, in the preseason he's getting some nice deployment, so maybe he'll be a good option. That was all we were going off of, but we ended up being right about that. So flowers to us. Anything else on Vancouver, Binksy?
No, I think you summed it up, bud.
Perfect. All right, let's finish this off with our last team. We're saving the best for last here. I guess not arguably. They won the cup last year, but it's the Vegas Golden Knights. They were first in the Pacific. They were the Stanley Cup champs. In terms of their underlying numbers, they were pretty average, and even a little bit below average in some categories. They were 22nd in Corsi for percentage, 16th in expected goals for percentage, and 22nd in scoring chances for percentage. They were 10th in the league in 5v5 shooting percentage at 9.01%. 9% is the mark that you're looking at in terms of, like, if you're a little below, you're probably going to positively regress. And if you're a little above, you're probably going to negatively regress. So they were right on 9%. So, yeah, there you go. They were 9th in 5v5 save percentage at 923. 18th in power play percentage, so not really a fantastic power play. Another team that kind of spreads the wealth around. They were 28th in power play shooting percentage, but we're actually kind of the bottom half in shot and chance generation on the power play. So not the best power play in the world. We'll just throw that out there. But they should see a little bit of positive regression with in terms of their shooting percentage. Logan Thompson had the most starts for them last year. He had some injury troubles, but really was their 1A to start the year last year. He had a 922 5v5 save percentage. And Aiden Hill, who took over in the playoffs and led them to the cup, he had a 916 5v5 save percentage, also struggled with injuries last year, only had 25 starts. And they spread the other starts around. Minor league players, Laurent Brossois, they used a lot of goalies last year, but it didn't really matter. They all played very well. Thompson actually has is going slightly higher than Aiden Hill by one spot. His ADP is 187.6 and Hills is 188.6. This wasn't the case a week ago, but things have changed. What do you think about that, Binksy? You're a big Aiden Hill guy. You were a big supporter of him as a starter. I think you get the ultimate flowers for that take. You were all Aiden Hill's going to start for this team, and he's going to be great. In the regular season, it wasn't really the case, but I think the fact that he ended up leading them to the cup I got to clap for you on that.
I did. I snuck in the back door, but
nice.
Terrible. I'm quote unquote famous for being an Aiden Hill supporter, right? Seeing him like creep out of the shadows and be like, guess what? I'm good. But I have to like really encapsulate this argument by saying that I like either one of these guys, right? I think Aiden Hill with the cup run is the incumbent. I wouldn't call it a short leash, but I also think the talent in that tandem is going to be closer to an even split, right? Like no matter who's the 1A, I think they're really going to split time. And both of them had health concerns last year, right? So there's no given that you're going to see either one of these goalies get ridden. They also are coming off a cup win, right? So we've got a cup hangover to deal with. And even more than that, Hill was the starter for the bulk of that, right? So he also going to be a little bit more tired. And we're talking about somebody who had 25 starts in the regular season last year. So as much as I like Aiden Hill, I like his ability and I believed in his ability to pop on a good team. And he certainly did that. I don't have a ton of faith that he's going to be a volume play throughout the season, no matter what happens. Like for either one of these dudes to get a glut of starts, the other one is going to have to be injured. And for as much as we have completely dismissed it, Robin Lehner still exists, right? Like we don't know what's going to happen with that, right? We had a bunch of questions about when he was going to play last year, and their goalie room was so good that it didn't matter. But I have concerns about who's the starter. I have concerns about the durability of whoever that starter is. I have concerns about questions with who comes from behind them to eat up starts at some point in the season. And provided that all of those things are good for either one of your choices, whether you want to take Thompson or Hill. And I think it's totally appropriate that their ADP is virtually the same because I think they represent the same option to me, right? Like all of the question marks are the same, all of the pluses are the same. But we're talking about a very strong defensive team, and they don't take a ton of shots on net. Like neither one of these guys got a massive amount of shots on them. So as much as I am like, yes, on Aiden Hill, as much as I believe in Logan Thompson, as much as I believe in Vegas, there's a lot of questions for this roster that don't necessarily set yourself up for success with fantasy, right? And if one of them was going 50 picks later, was going 60 picks later, then I'm happily going to take the back end of that tandem and run with it and be like, okay, either one of these guys could be successful. Either one of these guys could fully take over with a possible injury. But the way that the situation is right now, I don't see a clear cut favorite. And I'm not super excited about their fantasy prospects. So, like at 188, I don't hate it. And I've taken both of these guys in and around that range. But I did it mostly in best ball formats where I'm like, okay, either one of these two could be the true outcome, and I'm willing to bet on it in this format. But to build a successful team, I like neither one of them are like the clear pick for me. And I'm just kind of going to shy away unless either one of them represents a ton of value in my draft.
All right, let's look at the skaters now. Right now, Daily Faceoff has the top 6 as Barbashev, Eichel, Marchessault, Howden, Stevenson, Stone. So not a ton of depth there, but there are some interesting options. On the power play, they have Eichel, Stevenson, Marchessault, Stone, and Shea Theodore. Although Alex Pietrangelo has took a lot of reps last year, so I mean, I expect for them to still do the same thing, be kind of rotating back and forth as the power play quarterbacks, kind of interchangeably. All right, let's find some value here. Jack Eichel. Nate's got him for 33 goals, 78 points, 285 shots. Blake's got him for 38 goals, 79 points, 293 shots. He's a high volume shooter. He's going to be close to a point per game. His ADP is 32.1. I mean, that's about where you should be drafting Jack Eichel, in my opinion. I think that's what late third round, early fourth round. That's about right for me. Jonathan Marchessault. Nate's got him for 34 goals, 66 points, 282 shots. Blake's got him for 36 goals, 74 points, 308 shots. That's a lot of shots.
Yeah.
He's a high volume shooter. His ADP is 104.16. I think that's pretty good value for Marchessault. I'm surprised that he is being drafted so late, considering he was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. I expected him to be one of those guys where people were all over drafting him early, but people are being patient. And I think Marchessault has the potential to be really good value at 104. Mark Stone, this is a really interesting one. Nate's got him over 82 games at 30 goals, 77 points. Blake's got him for 26 and 68. His ADP is 120.09. It seems like everyone is kind of drafting with the expectation that he's going to miss lots of time, which I think is fair considering his back injuries, his struggle with the low back, and all the surgeries, and the fact that Elliot Friedman had said after the playoffs last year that he may never play a full 80. But I mean, he's playing right now. He's playing in the preseason. He's not like these other players. He's not like an Ekblad or a Montour or a Max Pacioretty, where they are injured and they're going to miss time. I mean, he's playing right now. So, I mean, he could potentially be pretty productive for you. We don't know how many games he's going to miss. He's probably going to miss time. We don't know how much. So at 120, that's not a terrible pick. Maybe you want him a little bit later than that, just to, if you're factoring in the games missed. But I mean, that's not a bad spot for Mark Stone. Alex Pietrangelo, Nate's got him for 14 goals, 49 points. He gets tons of shots and blocks, so has some peripheral value there. Blake's got him for 13 goals, 55 points. You said he had a career high 177 blocks in 73 games last year. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. He's always been a really good blocks guy. But yeah, he took it to new heights last year. His ADP is 78.13. That's another guy where I think that's about right for Pietrangelo. Shea Theodore, Nate's got him for 14 goals, 57 points. He gets lots of shots and blocks. Blake's got him for 14 goals, 59 points. So fairly comparable production, and actually even a little bit better in terms of points than Pietrangelo. Doesn't get as many blocks, but he does get blocks. And his ADP is 101.94. So there's actually some pretty good value here to be had with Shea Theodore, I think. He's another guy that's struggled to stay healthy in the past and has not really gotten. I think he has more offensive upside than Pietrangelo, but it just he hasn't gotten the chance to run with PP1, which is unfortunate. Chandler Stevenson, Nate's got him for 20 goals, 63 points. Blake's got him for 17 and 61. His ADP is 191.7. That's pretty good value for Chandler Stevenson. Line 2, power play 1. His peripherals are not great. Like he hits a little bit, but doesn't shoot a lot at all. Kind of like a Robert Thomas in that way, like a similar shot total. May still score you 20 goals, but it's mostly assists that he's getting. So, but at 191, that's not a bad ADP for Chandler Stevenson. I think he's definitely a 60-point guy, potentially even 70 points. Barbashev, Nate's got him for 18 goals, 44 points. Blake's got him for 20 and 47. His ADP is 166.28. So the fact that he's being picked above Stevenson, I think, is pretty surprising.
It is wild
because very similar shot totals. It's really just deployment. I think people are excited about him playing with Jack Eichel, but I just don't know that his point ceiling is very high. So I think in terms of value, I think Chandler Stevenson's probably your guy here. But I don't know. What do you think, Binksy? Are you leaning in any other direction?
Yeah, I mean, Stevenson does represent a value. Every single time that he's on a short list for me in a draft, I am like hemming and hawing about him. And then I go and review his stats year over year, and not one of them makes your eye pop, right? Like there isn't, he's just a consistent, like, depth player for your fantasy team. And that's fine. That's totally fine. And at 191, I've absolutely considered him in that range. I've never actually pulled the trigger. The only player that I seem to be drafting is Mark Stone. And it is really because the injury concerns, the back narrative, have pushed his ADP down to a place where I'm like, sure, we're talking about a top line, top power play player, right? Like a stone cold veteran player, like sheer expectation player that you're able to get. I've gotten him at 130 and 140. Like the further he goes, the less I'm able to just be like, nah, you know what I mean? Like the upside is certainly there. So, what I feel like is important to note with the projections that we reviewed for this team, like I feel like it's the all injury team, right? Like every one of these players, maybe they're just so good and they play so hard that they can't stay healthy. They just take so many blocks and hits and shots that they just can't stay on the ice. But every one of these players, we're talking about projections that are projecting them at 82 games. And as much as we don't draft for injury concerns, I don't think any one of these players plays a full 82. Like if I had to peg one, it would be like Barbashev. And he's such a physical player that I could see that not happening either. And even as I say that, like he's a great name and it was a great story after the trade and he's got a killer nickname and I like him as a player. I was so excited to see him go from the dumpster fire in St. Louis to Vegas and then go on and win a cup. Like I absolutely love watching this dude play hockey, but fantasy wise, he doesn't give you a ton, right? Not a huge amount of shots. Like at best, you're getting some hits out of it. And he's not a top power play player, at least the way things are projected to go right now. So the only player that I'm excited to draft is Pietrangelo with the power play options and all those peripherals. But at the ADP of 78, I zig where everybody else zags, right? Like I'm still going defense in this area. But it's right at the point where I start getting what I feel to be immense value with center. I'm starting to take lotto tickets on defensemen that can really pop as a power play quarterback. And there are questions about whether it's Pietrangelo or Theodore. And, I think it's Pietrangelo, but we could see it go either way. And again, there are injury concerns, right? So he's always on a short list for me. I never get to pick him because somebody else does. And it's so ironic because I hate Mark Stone after all these years as a Stars fan. Like I don't know that I would cross check him in the neck down on the ice, but I think about it, right? Like I really hate Mark Stone. And he's the only player that I seem to be ending up with short of like a piece of the goalie tandem later in the draft. And like, I believe in Eichel as a shooter and a scorer. I don't think he's going to stay healthy, and I don't want to risk it at 32. And like, as electric as Marchessault was in the playoffs, I don't, even though he shoots a ton, like, we haven't seen him just be massively successful throughout the season in Vegas, right? Like,
Yep.
doesn't always play a ton. Like, I have so many question marks and so many injury concerns that, like, the only value that I found is Stone, and I hate that. Like, I don't know. Like, Vegas is just a bunch of shrugs for me, like, across the board. I'm just kind of like, I'm not really sure what to expect.
I think Pietrangelo is actually a pretty safe in terms of 82 games. I know he missed time last year, but I think it was personal reasons. I think there was something like his kid was sick or something like that. I seem to recall. So I don't think it was injury related. And he's been historically actually pretty healthy. I know the year prior where everyone on the team was hurt, I think he played a full 82 or at least close to it. So I think in terms of games played, like if you're concerned about that, I think Pietrangelo is actually pretty safe. So, but in terms of a punt, I have Barbashev for the same reasons that I mentioned before. I think he's being picked a little bit too high, and I just don't think that point ceiling is very high. Last year, my punt was the goalies on the team. I just wasn't sure how their goaltending situation was going to shake out. They had 3 guys, and I wasn't super excited about any of them. So, I mean, that probably was a bad choice. I think Logan Thompson ended up being. They all provided decent value at times last year, but obviously maybe not at the ADP they were being drafted at. And then my sleeper this year is Dorofeyev. So he's a
Hmm.
guy. He's a young player that he got a stint with them last year and was half point per game in 18 games. They signed him to a one-way contract this year, and he has really nice underlying numbers. So I think if he can move up the lineup, which I mean, it's very possible. Like they got Brett Howden as their top or as their like in their top 6 right now. I'm not super convinced that he's a top 6 player. And like you said, they have tons of injuries all the time. A lot of these guys are injury prone. So there is a chance that Dorofeyev moves up the lineup there. So he's a guy to keep an eye on your watch list. I don't think I'm drafting him at all, but keep an eye on Dorofeyev. Last year we said Phil Kessel, and that was
Wrong.
unfortunately not
That
a
was
great
very
choice.
wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Any other points here, Binksy?
No, I don't think I got to hammer any of that. I agree with your punt. I think Dorofeyev is as good as any as a sleeper. I could see Amadio being a decent boost in value from where you're not having to draft him. I think there's an echelon of this team of like 3 or 4 guys, including Howden. It wouldn't shock me to see Kolasar eat a bunch more minutes and become a little bit more involved offensively, but I can't really call them sleepers because you're not going to have to draft any of these guys, right? They're just going to be
No,
like watch list players for me.
100%. All right, that's all we have for today. Please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. This is the most important time of year for us to be on everyone's radar. Your reviews really help with that. Also, if you like our content, check out the Apples and Genos Patreon to support us on a monthly basis. You can also hop into the Apples and Genos Discord server. We're having lots of discussions about fantasy hockey in there. We're talking draft strategy. Nate's running best ball leagues. I'm not sure if he's continuing those. We've done 22 of them. So I don't know if any of them are coming back up because we're drafting the real leagues now. We've got the cupful draft going. I know the 5-hole leagues are going. This week we're doing Apples and Genos listener leagues. Also, if you're interested in listener leagues, I know there's a wait list for people that are interested in listener leagues. So if you message Nate, he'll put you on a wait list, and if they get enough on the wait list, he may just start another listener league. So we'll see about that. We may be a little bit late there, but it wouldn't hurt to reach out. Shout outs to the band there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Follow us on X. Binksy is at Binklemania. Nate is at Apples Genos. Blake is at Blake Creamer AG. And I'm at Just Josh and 41. Please practice safe stats and happy drafting. Have a good one, folks.
Thanks for stopping.